Alright, you Pull and Pay customers. So today I'm going to demonstrate how to pull an engine. For ease of access on filming this, I am going to do this on our dry rack, our 2-post lift right here. This would be the same process, except you would drop the motor down out of the car with a hoist versus me lifting the car off the motor. So this weekend, Friday, November 5th, we are having a sale. It is $199 plus tax for an engine or a transmission. $199 you can get your engine or transmission. And that does come with the regular warranty and the ability to put an extended warranty on it as well. So you have 31 days after you get your engine, and then you have an additional 6 months on top of your 31 days if you would get an extended warranty. Definitely worth getting that for the extra $15 to $20. So at this point, we're going to go through the reason I'm pulling this engine and how to identify a car that has a running and driving engine, known running and driving engine. Okay, first things first, whenever you look at a car, if the car is wrecked, the car had to run and drive to wreck. So it should have a running and driving engine as long as it doesn't have mechanical damage from the accident. This engine has a broken valve cover, but it will run and drive. Still has a battery on it. I can start it up right now. But I'm pulling this engine for other stuff, and I just want to have a vehicle that I know runs and drives. So as you're looking at a car, you're not going to have a battery, you're not going to have fuel, you're not going to have oil. Okay? So you want to know the mileage on the engine. You don't have that nice fancy gauge cluster you have right there. What you do have is inspection stickers and oil stickers. That'll get you close. That'll give you a close idea to what mileage this motor has on it. This motor has 120 some thousand miles on it, runs and drives perfect, even having a damaged valve cover from the accident. That valve cover is way cheaper than a whole new motor. You can take it off the motor, you're replacing it. So as you're looking at this car, damaged all over the place. Back of the car is still pretty good, but it had to be running and driving to get into that accident like that. So very good bet on that. You may not have a good transmission in this because you have suspension damage, but there's a good possibility the engine and transmission are good in this car. I'll go through some other examples that I have out here, and I'll explain what the symbols mean on the cars and go from there. Alright, so we're back in the production area here, right outside from where the car was. So as we're looking at these cars, you see a lot of numbers on these cars, trying to figure out what is going on with these cars. First off, if you see a sticker on the window somewhat like this, that is a Copart sticker. You also have IAA. Those cars come from auction. With those cars coming from auction, they usually try to start those cars. This is an IAA, Insurance Auctions of America car. You will see right here, it has the last 4 of the VIN, which is no concern to most people, and then a D. That D means that they got the car started, they got the car running and driving before they sold the car. Obviously this car suffered a pretty catastrophic damage there. So that is one way to figure it out. Then you go back and you're trying to figure out how many miles you have on it. You have an inspection sticker right here. If it's from Pennsylvania, it has an inspection sticker. That'll give you a very good deal on how to judge your mileage. This car does not have miles written on it because it probably has a digital cluster that's not working or something of that nature. So that car is what it is. This car, they did not have anywhere to run and drive on here, so they tried to do this. They could not get this car started. It is a no start car. So it has, this is a lot number and some other stuff. It had a digital dash on it they could not get off. So this is unknown, but in order to be in an accident like this, you have almost no damage to the front end. You have a very, very damaged top and back. This car was a running and driving car when it got in this accident. There's no way you're going to do this kind of damage without being running and driving. Let's get into this car. No visual damage other than just basic wear. Old age of a car, okay? You can look at this car all you want. There's no markings on this car. Some cars come in, we cannot get running and driving. We have 1,600 cars on our site. We try to get as many running and driving before they go out to the yard. So this, we were not able to get running and driving, but whether it be battery issues, no keys, there's a lot of issues at that point that cannot have a car start. We don't have the time to sort out every car and get it running and driving. So this is a gamble. Now you can use your better judgment on this. You can look at this up. You got a police tow on this, so that means that the car is probably sitting for a very long time. You can look at your stickers, nothing there. You can look up here, has 163,000 miles. This car was probably not running and driving at the time. It could have been a transmission failure, it could have been an engine failure. Don't know. You're gonna have to use your better judgment, turn over the engine, check it all out. Then you get into cars like this. No visual damage on this car, okay? This car was brought in by somebody that just wanted to junk her car. This car was a running and driving car. That's what the R&D on the windshield means. R&D stands for running and driving. That means this car started up and drove to some capacity. So that is it. You'll get into some other co-part stuff going on here. It'll have S, which means it started, which means the engine runs. You'll get into D, that means runs and drives. The engine started and the car ran and drove. Then you will also have NS, no start, which means they do try to get these cars started before they go. You get to a car part, co-part car or something like that, an auction car, and you get NS, then that means that they tried to start the car. They will throw jump packs on it, stuff like that. They're not spending a ton of time on these cars. They're going through thousands and thousands of cars, but they actively try to get these cars started. It may be a point that there's no keys in it. Can't do anything when you don't have keys. Nobody's going to spend money on a junk car to get keys made for it. That's the reality of the situation. So, very good examples of what all of our symboling means on these cars. A lot of people ask, what does that yellow dot mean? That yellow dot is internal use. That means that the CFCs or the refrigerant or the AC was pulled out of this car. That's all that means. That has nothing to do with customers or anything else like that. That is pulled out as an environmental concern and a safety concern to our customers. That is a water-based paint. If you take soap and water, you can pull that paint off in very minimal time. Put it on body paint, anything like that. You see all these markings on here, that is grease pen. You can literally rub that stuff off and you have pretty much perfect paint. It is a non-marring paint. It's grease. So it's just allowing us to mark our cars so we know through the processes of what's going on. So from that point, we will get back to our Chevy Cruze over here and we'll take a look at it. All right, so we're back in here with the Chevy Cruze. This is about the height a car will be set in the yard, okay? It will sit about here. It's front bumper's usually about belly button, belt height, stuff like that. At this point, this is where you want to look over the car, inspect it for safety. So we're going to be dropping the struts when we drop this engine out to make it easy. So you want to inspect your strut towers, make sure they're all good. Inspect your engine mount so you know what you're getting into there, because you're going to be dropping them as well. And then over here, same strut tower. If there's damage to suspension component when you try to drop an engine, be aware of that. You should have a hoist mounted up to this at all times whenever you're dropping suspension components. So from that point, I will get this thing up in the air and I will show you the underside of the car, the subframe of the car. Alright, car is up in the air. We're going to go through our subframe mounts. So as you're looking around this car real quick while you're underneath it, check out everything. This car has not had the exhaust taken off of it because this car has not been processed. I use this car as a good running and driving indication to show that. So what you want to look at is you want to look at your subframe mounts. You got one here, one here, one here. You also have a brace right here you're going to take out. And that's your 4 subframe mounts. This right here is the transmission mount. So that's going to come later once you get the engine out of the vehicle. As you're looking through it, check for engine oil, stuff like that. You don't want to pull an engine, put a ton of time into something that could possibly be bad. This has a little bit of an oil leak right here. Not a big deal. The customer that is doing this is regasketing the motor, so that's fine. You get over here and looking at this. So if I drop this side, you have a bent and broken suspension system on this side. There's no CB joint attached, okay, that is gone. The control arm is gone, but your strut is still attached way up in there. So if you drop that, this side of the engine is going to fall down. Now that's where having the hoist on is going to be important. When you pull this, this makes it so that nothing falls down on top of you. So what you want to do first is pull your engine mounts and go from there. Alright, so before we get into pulling this engine, I want to get into the basic tools it will take in order to pull this engine. So I got a nice 1/2 inch rod, pretty long one. These bolts are going to be pretty torqued in there. They're meant to hold an engine in, so having big tools is going to be a handy thing to have. I got a pretty long 3/8 rod as well, because you're going to have to pull some stuff apart. I got a 3/8 swivel set. You do not need swivels, but they do help in situations, especially if you're using an impact. So having something like this and using a long extension with these makes things a lot easier and faster. When it comes down to it, have a good set of 1/2 inch drive sockets, okay? Impact rated if possible. If not, you can probably get away with some chrome plated ones. Just gotta be very, very careful. They can splinter under torque. A good hammer, you never know when you're gonna need that hammer to feed on a socket, anything like that. Have that, because there is times where these bolts are rusted or ground down or something like that. Having a hammer to be able to put a socket on is going to be very helpful. A pair of vice grips, because you never know when you're going to need them. I think you should have a bigger set than this. This is just a small set that I have real quick. A pry bar. This pry bar right here will allow you to pop stuff like the steering stabilizer off, anything like that. It'll go pretty easy with this. 1/2 inch impact. I have a Milwaukee right here. This thing does very, very well with stuff like this. Having an impact that is able to do what you're trying to do is going to be a positive thing to have. If you don't have an impact, a breaker bar, 1/2 inch breaker bar would be the next best thing. And go from there. I got a crescent wrench over here, just in case I don't have the right socket size, or I just need it for something else. I also have right here is a pair of wire cutters. These wire cutters are pretty serious. These will cut through transmission shift cables, anything like that. Having a nice pair of cutters, alignment, stuff like that. And the last thing, water. Make sure you have stuff to drink and eat, because you may be out there for a minute. Having something like that could seriously help you. You're going to be tired, you're going to be exhausted in the end of all this. So have some water, have some snack with you. It helps in the end. The last thing you want to do is think about your PPE. It's probably the first thing you think about, in all honesty. Having a nice pair of safety glasses. We live in Pennsylvania. Most of these cars are rusted underneath. Having a pair of safety glasses makes a big difference on whether you're going to be able to see properly the next day or not. When you start getting rust in your eye, you're going to get very angry. You're going to start thinking narrowly. You're not going to think about the risk and pulling an engine. So last thing you want to do is a nice set of gloves. These gloves will help prevent you from getting your knuckles and hands all cut up and busted. So from that point, we're going to move on to pulling the subframe out of the car, and we will get this engine dropped. Alright, so all your sub mount bolts are out, subframe bolts are out, all the bolts are out. This is loose, okay? It's not falling because there's still engine mounts holding the engine in. That will come here in a bit whenever we go to drop the engine mounts. So I went through, I cut the exhaust out, because you're not going to have an exhaust whenever you're doing this by yourself. It will already be pulled off of the car whenever you're out in the yard. So from here, you would have an engine hoist attached to the top of the engine. At this point, you got your subframe mounts out. All you gotta do is pull your motor mounts and free up your steering shaft right up in there, which you gotta hang the motor on to do that. Once you get that stuff freed up, this engine will literally fall out once you take out the struts. And at that point, you put it on a hood or something so you're able to drag the engine out. You'll see me put a pallet jack underneath this engine to be able to pull it out. So, I'm gonna lower this car down, start working on the engine mounts, and then go from there. Alright, so you got this far. Engine subframe is disconnected from the car. You have the engine just sitting here waiting on the engine mounts. And you're at a point now where you would have to put on your tie down. So, right here I have one, and it's usually better to go on the back of the engine, but I have two tie downs in the front of the engine. So, in order to do a tie down on this engine, I would have to go at this point and I would have the hook right about here. The closer you are to here, the better off the leverage you're going to get. So, one thing we have to we get asked the most: how do I get a sling? How do I hook up a hoist to an engine like this that I'm not able to get the hook in? Seatbelts, guys. Seatbelts. Seatbelts are the strongest, most over-engineered part of a vehicle. This seatbelt right here, it's able to save lives. It'll support an engine. We pull engines out with them all the time, and it's not going to hurt anything. Cut your seatbelt the length you need, tie it onto the engine. You're able to use that as your hook point for your hoist. So, now you got the engine supported with your hoist, and you're ready to drop the engine. Now it's time to find the engine mounts that connect the engine to the frame rails of the car. So, I found that one over there, and this one over here. That battery box was already destroyed from the accident, so I was able to just pull a couple pieces out when I got the battery, and I found that engine mount pretty easily. On this side, it was already exposed. So, those are your two engine mounts you want to pull out of the car. Pull those two engine mounts out, the engine will start dropping whenever you lower the hoist. You may have to get under there, push on the subframe a little bit to get it to disable from the mounts, and then start lowering it down. If your hoist slacks up, stop, put a little bit of tension on it, just enough so it doesn't sling down, and then come back over and find out what's hanging up. You may have to get a pry bar in here, you may have to do some other stuff. Your steering disconnect, way down there. You may have to get that pop loose. Those always hang up. So, at this point, I'm going to put you in the tripod. I'm going to disconnect these motor mounts and allow the engine to fall out while I lift up the car. This will be the same process except in reverse out in the yard. You're going to keep the body stationary and drop the engine out of the engine bay. So, give me a second, get the tripod set up, and we will drop this engine out. Alright, so at this point, your engine mounts are loose, okay? Do yourself a huge favor. Don't leave the bolts in there. Take them out. Because they will get hung up on one or two threads and it will not allow the motor to drop. So right now, this thing is actually sitting on a pallet below. Similar how it would be sitting and holding itself up with the engine hoist. At this point, I'm going to start lifting up the car and you'll watch the engine fall out. Right there. Okay, engine is out. This side is not supported by anything because it had broken suspension components on this side. Remember that. This side is being supported by your strut. Now you need to take out your strut. Will not let it budge down. It's fully decompressed. So I am going to put you guys on tripod again. I'm going to pull that strut while I have it tensioned down there so it doesn't flop out and break the pallet. I will do this so that the engine can sit on the pallet, and then you would lift up, and then all you gotta do is go around and remove various hoses and other stuff that needs to be done. You can see the steering shaft way back down in there. It started pulling out, but it got hung up because of that strut. So you may get lucky, the steering shaft may just pop out. You may have to get in there and remove the bolts and allow it to come out that way. So I'll be right back, put you in a tripod, and we'll go from there. All right, your struts are free. They can now move as they need to. All right, so engine is literally being held on by your steering shaft over there. And then when you look in here, you have brake lines. These rubber brake lines have to come off, whether you disconnect them up there, cut them, or do however you need to do to get these brake fronts out. They will hold an engine. Trust me on that. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna grab my cutters right here. Cut the line. Same over here. Cut the line. Now, I'm gonna put you in the vise and we'll time lapse me getting this engine out. Alright, at this point, your engine has been dropped on the ground because of you pulling the sub mounts and everything like that. Your engine is not sitting here. This is where it is very important that you put a hood down before you did this. This will allow you to slide the engine out a lot easier. Gives a smoother surface. So, at this point, you want to throw a couple straps, seat belts, whatever on here, and you and a buddy, or you and somebody else you can drive in the yard, start sliding it. I have mine on a $30 because I need to move it around, so that's where it's going to go. I'm going to buy myself. So at this point, pull the engine out of the car. You now have your engine transmission assembly unit complete. At this point, it makes it a lot easier for you to go through and disconnect the transmission or an engine from the transmission and separate these two pieces. So if you don't need transmission, so you can just get the engine, or you don't need the engine, you need transmission. Now everything's separated, your engine is out of the car, and you can go along with whatever else you had planned. This right here is the steering shaft that I was talking about. We got lucky enough this thing popped loose. Normally they don't pop loose. If they don't pop loose, there's a bolt right there. Take that bolt out and slip a screwdriver in there and pop it off. It's that simple. This is how you can drop an engine in our yard successfully with minimal damage and go from there. This car had a lot of front end damage. We knew it was a running and driving car whenever it came in. We pulled this motor for other reasons. We have a customer that needs it, and this will go to them so they can continue to keep their car on the road. At that point, there was a lot of damage to this car. A lot of the wiring in the front here, a lot of the pulling was damaged, a lot of other stuff. The valve cover was damaged. There was not much savable on this car besides the engine and the front end. So we got to save the parts out. We will now sell them to the customer that needs them. Other than that, remember, Friday, November 5th, we are having an engine sale. Engine transmission sale at that, actually. $199 plus tax gets you an engine or transmission. You can get your extended warranty, but you also have a 31-day warranty with your purchase. If you would like to get an engine or transmission, please come visit us down here at Pull And Pay Pittsburgh, 250 Eastgate Drive, Penn Hills, PA 15235. Well, thanks everybody for sticking with me on pulling this engine. I have this engine out. It's going to go to its new home. I hope you guys can go out there and find what you need in our yard. If you have any questions, please message us on Facebook at Pull And Pay Pittsburgh, or you can go and call us at our phone number. I will add it at the end of the video. You can call us at any time. We can look up parts for you. We can help you at the best of our convenience, or at the best of our ability, not convenience. So I'll leave it there, guys. Have a good one and happy pulling.